Just so you know, I cannot see myself right now, so hopefully everything looks right. If it doesn't, I will go ahead and fix it when I can stop the camera and see what is on there. So today I am going to show you guys some things that I have both in my store at Teachers Pay Teachers and on my website, theproductiveteacher.org. The cool thing about my website is that it's membership based. So you pay $9.99 a month and you can have access to all of my 400 plus resources. And when I show you what I have today, I think you'll see why that's a very good deal for any upper elementary or middle school classroom, because there's just a lot that I have that will let you differentiate for your students and teach them not only everything that I forgot to turn on my light. Hold on, let me do that real quick. There you go, definitely brighter now. Anyway, so it will make it easier for you to differentiate for your students, and when you are teaching a new topic, you will have lots to choose from. So I'm going to take you through a introduction to some of the things that I have. As I said, both on Teachers Pay Teachers at The Productive Teacher or my website, theproductiveteacher.org or productiveteaching.org. Okay, let's start here at this end of the desk. So for a while there, I was very interested in the Earth history. And that is because when I was teaching middle school science, that was one of the topics we were teaching. But I didn't have a textbook, I didn't have any resources, so I had to come up with everything. And I felt every day like in a panic, because I would need to find something to teach, figure out how to teach it, and then teach it to my students. And it was very overwhelming. So now that I'm out of the classroom, I was able to kind of go back and create the resource that I wish I would have had. And so it's kind of a big one. The first thing you get is a reading passage, a one-page reading passage for making printing easy. This one is on the Eocene epoch, and I have them on all of the eras, all of the periods, no, maybe not all of the periods, all of the eras, all of the maybe epics. Now I'm having a moment, I can't remember. Anyway, I have them oh, you know what? I'll be able to show you in just a second. So for right now, we'll just think about, this is about the Eocene epoch, which you can see was 56 million years ago to 33.9 million years ago. So this reading passage takes through what the life was like during the Eocene epoch, what started it and what ended it, what animals were around, all that good stuff. This is another version of that same reading passage with the same information. You can see this one has titles to help students stay organized. So this would be for students who needed a little bit more support to work independently with the reading passage. And because of the titles, it is just a little bit longer, so that would be 2 pages to print out. Now, for your students who need even more support, this version of the reading passage has a picture to match each sentence. Sometimes it's 2 sentences, each idea from the passage with 1 picture, so that even if the students have trouble understanding the words, the picture will give them some context to make it easier to understand. And you can see this one is even longer, 3 pages. Okay? So it's 3 different versions of the reading passage, but they all 3 have all the same information. Then you get some questions, some multiple choice questions and short answer questions. All of these questions can be answered using any of the reading passages. Then each of my resources on Earth history come with this geochronological scale to help you reorient your students to where they are in Earth history as they're learning what they're learning. So you get that. And then you also get my printout of the geologic time scale. And so this is, I can tell you which reading passages I have because each box here coordinates with one reading passage. So we start out, let me see. I guess I did not include it. So I actually have a reading passage on the Hadean eon, which is not always recognized as an eon, but it's when the Earth first formed, and it's super interesting. So I would definitely recommend starting there. Here I start with the Archean eon, and then the Proterozoic eon. If I mispronounce something, I'm doing the best I can. I'll get better. So these each have a reading passage. Then I have one on the Phanerozoic eon, which is the eon that we are currently in. And so this has been broken down by me into more specific divisions. I didn't make the divisions, I just made the reading passages for these divisions. The eons up here are also broken down into smaller divisions, but I didn't include reading passages on those. Okay, so then we have the Paleozoic era, which has a reading passage. We have the Silurian period or Dovecian period and Cambrian period that all have reading passages. Then we're still in the Paleozoic era in the Phanerozoic eon. The Permian period, the Carboniferous period, and the Devonian period all have reading passages. Then we go to the Mesozoic era, which has a reading passage. The Jurassic period and Triassic period each have reading passages. Still in the Mesozoic era, the Cretaceous period has a reading passage. Then we go into the Cenozoic era, the era we are currently in, that has a reading passage. The Quaternary period has a reading passage, Neogene period reading passage, Paleogene period reading passage. Then all of these epochs of the Cenozoic era also have reading passages. So a lot of reading passages, and you probably would not use all of them in your class for every student. But if you have a student who's super interested in it, why not let them go to town and read them all? That's why I like the membership option, so you can do that for your students. Or if you want to buy on Teachers Pay Teachers, then it is in a bundle that saves you a lot of money. Okay, last thing, this is the reason this pile of papers was so big. I went ahead and took all of the pictures from the reading passage that's broken down into pictures and turned them into a book. So you could bind this for use by students in your classroom. They could access it as a Google Doc. You could give it to kids who need even more support with the one-page information at a time. Just lots of options of ways to use it. So you can see each page has the writing and a picture to match it. And I get all my pictures from Shutterstock, and I do my best to show what things look like, but of course I don't have pictures from the Eocene epoch, so I do the best I can to give you an idea of what everything looked like. So these just go on and on. So that is an option feature that you get. So this one was on the Eocene epoch. As you heard me, I have a whole bunch of Earth history reading passages that would be helpful in your classroom. I'm very proud of them. But I wanted to give you just a sampling of other things I have. This one is sort of related to Earth history. In fact, I would teach this before I taught Earth history. This is my Layers of the Earth reading passage. This is the best-selling reading passage in my store. It's one of the oldest ones I have. I literally wrote the first draft of this for my students in my science class when I didn't have a textbook. It has been updated since then and made better. So this one has a special place in my heart though. So this goes through the 4 layers of the Earth. It's 2 pages. And then I have another version that is a little bit easier to read. It uses shorter sentences and smaller words when possible. So another way to differentiate for your students. Then this version of the reading passage, it's printed out, so you can't click on these links if it's printed out. But if students are accessing it on the computer, if they click these blue links, it will take them to web pages that will teach them more about the topic. So for example, seismograph is blue here, so if they click on it, it will take them to an article about what is a seismograph. Same thing with here, supercontinent and Pangea, and when it says a group of scientists in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, that will take them to the news story about the scientists who are trying to reach the mantle for the first time ever and what's going on there, which is kind of cool. So that is fun, just different way to do it. That can either be for your super curious students, your students who like a challenge, or for your students who need remediation and get tired of stopping working on a reading passage to go and look up a word. This way it's all hyperlinked, they can go straight to the link. And then here's the interactive part of the reading passage. They have a notes page that they can keep track of what they're learning about the layers of the earth. And then questions page, and there are actually 2 questions pages here. So short answer and multiple choice about layers of the earth. So that's a simple reading passage about the layers of the earth. I also have them on layers of the atmosphere. I have 2 versions of that one. One is just a printable resource, and the other one is an audio linked version. So I went and recorded myself reading all of the passages, and then there are links that the students can listen to that to help students who have trouble reading. When I worked in a middle school many years ago, one of the biggest problems I found with students in my science class was that they didn't have the reading skills necessary to understand what was in a science text. And so that created some behavior problems, and I just want to help teachers be able to deal with that issue in a way that is not embarrassing for students and everyone still learns what they need to learn. Okay, now this that I'm about to show you is really probably more helpful for high school teachers, but if you're in middle school and you're teaching chemistry, you would really enjoy these, I think. Even upper elementary teachers could use this to teach their students chemistry because it's telling a story, and all of us can understand stories. In fact, there's been some research that kids can actually understand more content than we give them credit for in the upper elementary grades. So I'm really excited to start seeing some of the complicated content that kids are learning in high school being brought down to the lower grades in a way that is developmentally appropriate for the ages, but gets them excited about learning and all the cool stuff going on in our world. So this article is part of my History of Chemistry series. It's similar to the Earth History series in that there's a bunch of reading passages about chemistry topics. The way I started working on this project was that I remember when I was a freshman in high school taking chemistry, and it felt overwhelming to me because it felt like we were just memorizing things. And how do we know that this is the way it works? How do we know that helium has 2 electrons? So those questions kind of stuck with me ever since then, and now that I have time to think about those things, I really wanted to focus on telling students the whole story. So I went through and researched from ancient times of what chemistry was like in our world and how it changed and what discoveries were made and how they were made and what people got wrong. Super important for that growth mindset instruction is showing that even the smart history, and it feels very just memorize it, which for me is not a good way to learn. I know there's got to be other kids out there who have trouble learning through memorizing. So this tells the story about how they discovered that there were orbitals in atoms, or electrons were in orbitals around atoms. It's kind of an interesting story. And then I've got a picture here so you can see a 3D representation of what the orbitals look like, even though we draw them in concentric circles. And then we have questions to answer about the reading passages just to help kids focus in on the information, make sure they're paying attention when they're reading. Now, some of the reading passages, that's all there is, because it's information, it's part of the story. Because orbitals is something that kids are expected to work with, I also included some orbitals worksheets. So now that you know the story, let's apply it here. And each time I have one page explaining what it is. So my idea is that kids in your classroom can all be working independently. So they have everything they need to do the work. You don't have to teach them anything. So this explains about orbitals, and then students are expected to apply what they learned and draw orbitals themselves. This page is on electron configuration notation. Again, all the information. Then they apply it here. And then orbital configuration. So this is the pairs of electrons and how you draw them. And then here they apply it. And all the answer keys are included. So even a sub could grade them for you. So that's about history of chemistry, one of them. Okay, last one for today. I get excited and I tend to go on and on. I'm working on it. This last one is about the human body. This was, I was gonna think to print it out and I didn't. I have another reading passage set all about energy, which kind of reminds me of chemistry a little bit. So I have, I started with one on potential and kinetic energy to help students understand the difference between potential and kinetic energy. And I got feedback from a teacher who said, "You're wrong, atoms never don't have potential energy," something like that. And so I responded that I was keeping it simple as an introduction to students, but it made me want to kind of dive deeper into energy for students. So now I have several reading passages all about energy that you can do a whole unit with your students and talk about the different kinds of energy. So I'm proud of those too. Okay, this one is from my human body set. So this one that I printed out for you is on the muscular system. I also have them on the digestive system, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the skeletal system. There might be other ones too. Okay, so the first thing this one has is a checklist. The idea, again, that students are working independently, so you never have to have a student come up to you and say, "I'm done, what do I do next?" They have their checklist right here, and then when they're all done, they staple everything together and turn it in. So that's kind of helpful for that. Then the reading passage part starts with an overview. So this is all the most basic information on the muscular system, which is helpful for students. And then this one, because there's so many parts of the muscular system, it is kind of like a textbook more than a reading passage. You'll see. So this page is all about the muscle cells. So I show what skeletal muscle cells look like, smooth muscle cells, cardiac muscle cells, and then tell about it. Then from muscle cells, we move to muscles and explain the different kinds of muscles, how they work, where they're found. And this is a 2-page part. So I've got, this was mostly skeletal muscle, then we have smooth muscle and cardiac muscle. Next, we have muscle fibers. So explaining what a muscle fiber is and explaining how muscles contract, which is pretty complicated. I don't know necessarily that I would give upper elementary kids this information on how muscles contract unless they want it. If a student wants to learn something, they are able to comprehend and be successful with complicated stuff. We all know that. So if a student does part of this and it's like, well, how do muscles contract? How do they work? Great, you have it here for them, but you don't need to give this to every student in the classroom. Okay, this is more on how muscles contract, and I included diagrams that I thought were helpful in understanding how it works. And then the last part of all of my systems units include how they are a part of the whole body, how they all work together, which I think is important for students to understand, because all of these designations that we have, like the human body systems, humans name those. Everything in our body just works together. So I really want kids to understand that. Okay, next, because I know that everybody learns different ways and personalized learning is really important to me. I think that I would have enjoyed school a lot more if we had used personalized learning. So I also found some videos that are helpful for understanding the muscular system. And I made a list of these. Again, if it was on the computer, you could just click it and go right to the video. So students can use the reading passage, but they could also use video. And then I have questions. So these are reading passage questions that come directly from the reading passage, which could also be answered using video. And then I have just general muscular system questions that can also be answered using the reading passage, but through video. And then these questions are particular or specific to the steps of muscle contraction. So this would only be if you were teaching your students the steps of muscle contraction. Here we have a Venn diagram for comparing the 3 types of muscle. This would be a great activity for upper elementary students as well as middle school students. And then these are reading activities that I like to include when I remember with my reading passages so that you're able to do that cross-curricular instruction. So this is really focusing on the idea that before we read something, we have to ask questions to understand why we're reading it. So students write their questions in here, and then as they read, they can write the answer. You can also have them just write 1 or 2 questions to start, and then as they read, if a question comes up, they can write that in there. They might find the answer to their questions in the reading passages, or they might not, and then they have to think about what sources they would have to go to find it. I really like this because I think this is how good thinkers think. They're always asking questions, they're always looking for answers, and we want to show our kids how to do that. These are vocabulary pages, so I went through and I personally identified words that I thought kids would not know, and then I made a vocabulary page. I think it's actually more powerful if you have the students go through and find the words they don't know, and then they can make their own vocabulary list that will be helpful to them. But just because you never know, I included one. So this, I had a blank one, and then this one has the words on it. So if you had a kid that you knew was going to struggle with the reading passage, you could give them these pages right away. So if they don't know a word, they have a quick way to find the definition. And then the blank ones might be for kids who are ready for a challenge, or if they're working in small groups, maybe one of the activities they do is find the definition. Okay, and then this is another thing that is a writing activity that I can include with my reading passages, where your students plan for an essay on the muscular system. So they come up with what is their big idea about the muscular system, and then have it broken down into topics, and they just go through the essay writing process to sharpen those skills on a topic they're learning about in science. This is a chart where they can list where different muscles are in the body. I have listed the muscles down here to help them out, and I have a diagram to help them. So everything you need is included. I'm not expecting you to provide students with anything except what is in the packet. And then I also have anchor chart pictures, so you can use these to make your own anchor chart, or you can print them smaller and give them to students to cut out and put in their own notebooks and take notes around. I just think it's always better to have more pictures than less when trying to learn something new. That was a long video. I have a lot of stuff. As you can see, I'm very excited about what I do, about learning new things myself, helping students learn new things, helping you be the best teacher you can be without driving yourself crazy. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're interested in the membership option, that is at theproductiveteacher.org. And if you just want a one-off, you can always go to Teachers Pay Teachers, and my store is The Productive Teacher. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.